Hello, friends. Welcome to the podcast. This one is for all you music geeks. My guest today is an audio engineer and he plays in the Dunedin band known as Fly Spray. This is a good one if you're into the technical side of audio production. This guy is crazy talented and knows so much. I learned a lot from our conversation. He's also the nicest guy ever. Please welcome the lovely Peter Molteno.
Home Audio Entertainment.
9016 Radio.
The show for artists of all kinds.
Sit down, relax, enjoy the music.
Already losing
Cheers.
myself.
Cheers.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you. So, explain that all again.
So,
The decibel highs and
so
lows.
the reason why you set your gain so that you've got like a good that you're clipping. Well, this is even before you can record at whatever gain you like, but the gain going into all your plugins because of what you've got. Oh fuck! I feel like there's too much too
Right.
much explaining.
Yeah,
the
the
get
depths of music mixing and mastering is endless. There's too many things.
It's all about like the files and the bit rate and the block size and stuff.
I've learned a lot recently, man, and I'm pretty grateful for YouTube, how much you can pull off watching just tons of YouTube videos end on end.
Yeah, I'd say I do, receive all of my knowledge from there.
Yeah, is that mainly how you've built up this base of knowledge for this sort of thing?
Yeah.
Mainly
And
comes from that? You haven't been to school or anything in that regard?
no, I did. My dad's a physics lecturer, and I did like 1 year of physics, maths, and comp sci at university, and that was like I was like, oh yeah, just super into that sort of stuff. Didn't really enjoy it so much, but yeah, I just really enjoy the problem aspect of it, and like signal processing is like remarkably translatable to physics and
For sure.
and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you obviously got into music from a playing side of things initially, I presume.
Yeah, man.
And then sort of dive into those bits later on. I suppose
Yeah.
you don't come in from the opposite end of the spectrum.
No, I played guitar all through high school.
Yeah.
And I've started a metal band with a few friends, probably like 2015.
Sick.
And we were going, we practiced like twice a week and played like 10 shows over 3 years.
Sweet. At least you're playing shows though, you weren't just a band that was hoping for something to prop up,
Yeah, man. Our proudest achievement was coming third in Battle of the Bands 1 year.
Sick.
Especially with Logan screaming his lungs
Yeah.
out, which was pretty great.
That's sick, yeah. Well, it's something, man. You got to start somewhere, and look where you are now.
Yeah. Well, I can't say it's amounted to too much, but it's looking promising at the moment.
But you've stuck with it, I think there's something to be said for someone that has something that they've picked up at a young age and really stuck with and know that they've loved. I've been all over the place trying to figure out what it is that I like doing, and I don't even know if I'm there yet. So it's always an admirable thing to see.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Sticking with something is so hard sometimes. Like you just hit one wall and you just doubt everything.
Yeah, it's so
You're just
easy,
like-
and that defines what makes you good in a certain field. How you learn from what doesn't work, and how you actually react to when things aren't working, or if you can't get it the way that you want to. If that just makes you mad to the point where you just quit, then you're never really going to do well.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I feel like I've hit so many blocks, and you hit a block and then you have like an epiphany, and it'll just boost you like 10 times above what you thought you know, and it just shows you how much you don't know, and then you're just like, oh man, I just gotta keep charging in order to get to that next little level.
Yeah, and that comes back to the attitude thing. If you're just like, right, this is motivation for me to keep doing it, you know that you're gonna do well. Yeah. And I've so the type to just quit on whatever it is that I'm doing as soon as something goes wrong. I'm the worst for watching someone do something and finding the motivation from that to start doing it, but do it in such a way where your only standard is how you've seen it initially. Yeah. So you're in your head, you've got this idea of how you're going to look or how it's going to feel based on what you've seen. Where in reality, you just crash and burn and.
I wouldn't say you crash and burn per se, but your expectation is the final product, and you tend to, and in order to sustain a passion or something, you've just got to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you see one thing go wrong, and then you're just like, oh, whatever, like that's me over.
Yeah.
But and you'll come to realize that everything that you don't know, there's like thousands of hours worth of base knowledge that you can acquire before you get to that end product. And it's just kind of like filling in the blanks. And if you enjoy filling in the blanks, then that's like half the battle.
Exactly.
I reckon. Like for me, I was just like, well, what is this thing? And then you just like in audio at least, and you just Google it, go down a weird rabbit hole of forums.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to get lost in that.
Yeah. And then
so easy to sort of get caught up or get sidetracked by, especially in creative fields or things where you can potentially be very successful at. Or in terms of being well known for something that you're doing, it's easy to get lost or taken away from the task by what the end result's going to be. And I've quite often done that as well. I sort of thought, this can take me to this place or this place, and sort of look in that direction rather than figure out the logistics of things and building up an actual repertoire of what is needed to be done to achieve that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, dude, that relates just exactly to what I'm up to at the moment.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like I need like this super robust portfolio in order to make it to the next step. But the fact is that like every time you bring on another thing, your portfolio proves itself, and you're to whoever you're taking on. You know, for me, like
what is the context of this portfolio?
You know, like for me, just you know, like for me, it's like recording music. You know, like having releases on Spotify that people could go and
Okay,
like
you're talking
have
about
a look.
a sort of figurative.
Yeah,
portfolio.
a figurative portfolio of your creative outlet.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
or at least you know like a representation of your work that people can go and have a look at, and they can and from there understand like what you're up to and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I just think it's just all about for me at the moment, just making that super robust so that you can move to the next step. But it's kind of an ongoing process. Like it's not. There's never a next step. It's just a line.
Yeah, for sure.
It's got a gradient. It's going up or down which way, but it's never. You got to get there. You just got to keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure. So, what is the next step or the next page in your portfolio? Do you think? How many boxes do you think have been ticked, or do you see it as sort of an endless thing? There's always something to learn to achieve.
Well, in my mind, like the kind of next step would be to build like I was saying, build up enough of a portfolio to like move effectively to another city or like another country and still work in the same field without having to do all the base work again.
Yeah, cool.
Like and for that you kind of define yourself as that profession or that craft or whatever. And if you can pull that off, I think that's like top tier in my mind. I reckon that's like that's been the goal for me for a long time.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's kind of like it's coming at me pretty quick. Like I've just,
it's all unraveling.
Yeah, it's all happening pretty quick for me at the moment. But yeah, if I can eventually if someone overseas, offers me a job or something, I'll be like, well, here we are.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting. Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. You mentioned that sort of cycles back to something I was going to ask you about. A little birdie had told me a few weeks back that you had moved to Auckland. I was under the impression for a while that you had moved to Auckland. Is that even close to being true?
No, not at all. Not at all. I've made no plans to move to Auckland.
Interesting.
Always enjoy visiting. Got some family up there who are.
I was going to say
super fun and interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So aside from that question, or adding on to that question, is that not somewhere you'd see yourself moving to, or is there somewhere outside of Dunedin that you think you could perhaps thrive a bit more, or do you think you're pretty comfortable in Dunedin as far as music goes?
I actually really enjoyed Dunedin.
Yeah.
Like I like that whole like spiel about being able to move effectively is contextual on the fact that whatever place I'm going to has like an established scene or anything like that, and like music and artists that I enjoy, and like for personal reasons perhaps, or anything like that. But where else?
Yeah, I mean, do you think, as far as what you're doing with music, do you sort of look at, like, to your point, do you look at a type or a scene that's emerging in a city as something that you want to be part of? Like, do you sort of think there's a scene here that's in your tier?
Absolutely. I honestly think that I'm like level with the scene in Dunedin at the moment.
Yeah,
and
sure.
like I don't want to come off as pretentious or anything like that. But like
I think you fit that.
Yeah, I feel great about it. Like I've never asked anyone to come really record with me. Obviously in the very beginning, there's like, you're just very excited to get it all done and whatnot.
Sure.
But it's gotten to a point over the past year where people just will hit me up, and I've just had like a fairly steady flow of people coming in, and it's just like I feel very grounded with all the people that are in the scene at the moment. They're supporting me in like a really great way, and I feel like I'm doing my best to, show how great they are,
Yeah,
and like that's
absolutely.
the whole job.
Oh, it helps to be
Really.
a nice person.
Oh, well, dude, I swear that's like half the job. Like just trying to
Facilitate and accept.
yeah,
and
well, it's just
deliver.
making a comfortable environment for someone to perform in, so they don't feel judged. They've got to feel like relaxed enough to be able to, like, you've done this really great in here. No one can see this, but this is a very homely,
Hopefully soon they will see. But thank you.
professional looking setup,
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh, great. I feel comfortable. I feel like I can, perform at like the
Perfect.
level
Well,
that I need to.
That was the goal, man. And aside from whether any of the stuff is effective or not, that is kind of the point of it as well. Like, you're coming into an atmosphere, you're coming into a
Yeah.
vibe, really. You're getting
Yeah.
sort of a
And-
sense of comfort.
And that's what people will come back for, that like, or make you like feel comfortable or trust.
Yeah.
And like, referencing the portfolio, that's one thing. But if you've got experience with someone and you enjoy what they do and how they do it, and them as a person, I feel like that's, just as valuable, like if not more so.
For sure. Yeah.
Obviously there's, skill limits and all that stuff, but everyone's learning all the time, the artists, myself.
Absolutely. And the only way you're going to learn more is by doing the work more.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fantastic that you're getting people come to you, because the more that happens,
Yeah.
more things will prop up. You'll dive into different genres. People will be wanting different things. You'll
Yeah.
pick up things. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like the band I'm currently in, I kind of like formed out of the expectation that it'd be this ongoing project that I'd always be able to work on
Yep.
and always like try and make better and everything like that. And that's such a cool thing that now, not that I don't need that. I love playing music and I love like going out and playing gigs and going to gigs and stuff. But other people are sustaining that for me as well. It's no longer under my own steam making shitty
For sure.
demos and
Yeah.
all
So
that sort of
you
stuff.
find it a bit less stressful being sort of not the main part of a band? Not to say you're not a key figure in the band, but it's more towards Jack's side of things, isn't it?
Yeah, no, he's the creative director, I'd say,
For sure,
if
yeah.
you were to put a title on it.
Yeah.
He's got the vision. He's he knows what he wants out of a song. And like I'll spitball ideas all over the
Yeah.
place.
But
He
you're mainly
gets-
following suit in a way.
I've like I'd say I write maybe like 30% of the songs.
Okay.
None of the vocals.
Yeah.
But I like I said, come from a very metal background, so
Yeah.
I tend not to even consider vocals.
Yeah,
I'm just
for
like,
sure. It's all just noise.
riffs,
Yeah.
drums, groove,
Sick. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I would imagine it would be a lot more stressful in a band setting if you were the front man of Salts or the main facilitator,
It makes it a lot easier having a three-piece because
Yeah.
there's, only three opinions to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
My metal band previous to this was 5 people,
Wow.
and
Bit too much?
like we were going for a while, so we kind of like found our feet in our roles and stuff. But
Yep.
like there were some practices where just nothing got done.
Right.
Just you'd get to it and you'd be like, oh well, Andrew's been noodling for a good 2 hours, and Ollie's just been hitting the fucking bell, just
Yeah.
trying to get everyone to be quiet.
Yeah, right.
And
so
you
it
just
kinda
like
end up being like a chill
no
session
one,
rather than a practice.
Yeah, and it just kind of loses focus like too easy if you have too many people involved. I
Yeah,
think.
for sure. Yeah, I think that's probably why you probably see 4 people most commonly in a band setting. It seems to be
Yeah.
3 or 4 is kind of your ideal setup. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Look, anything's a go, but I think
So many factors to consider. I suppose,
so
in
many
that sense,
factors.
yeah.
I reckon. Oh, in my job, I tend to deal with one person. I ask the band, who am I dealing with?
Right.
And then I will contact that person. They will deliberate with the band and everything like that. And I reckon that's how, like, a lot of solo artists will have their own band. That works out great because they're just doing their job,
Yeah, for sure.
Like their vision is carried out without too much question. It's, not that that's a bad thing, and often very often good session musos or people who are in the band have like a really competent background and are able to add their own flavor without distracting or detracting from the original vision. But I think it's good to assign roles within a band,
100%,
because otherwise you do feel like
any sort of group setting can get so out of hand if you've got too many people throwing their fingers in the pie. It just becomes, I think that's a smart way of doing it. Hone in on that one person who's got the idea. And
absolutely.
See how it works.
And that's kind of how I see my band at the moment. I really do see Jack as the go-to guy when it comes to
for sure.
what are we up to next?
Even though all three of you guys could easily contribute to starting something, making something. It's easier to just let someone take the lead. And
absolutely. And it means I can focus on other things.
Yeah, for sure.
All the other shit I've got going on at the moment, I feel like I just, practice and show up for practice, and then Jack kind of takes care of the direction for a lot of it. And I just think that's a huge stress off my shoulders,
absolutely.
Which he can...
Much easier to get told what to do than figure out what it is to tell people to do. So you've got a bit on your plate at the moment. You've got lots of people coming to you. Are you pretty much wrapped up in that full time now? Or are you doing?
Currently, I'm wrapped up in it full time. I don't have a lot of new stuff coming in, but I've got 5 projects which are all around the same stage of nearing completion and
So is this people coming to you with things to mix and master, or is this you contributing?
This is recording.
Wow. Okay. So people come into your studio to record stuff. Sweet.
And so it's happened. One of the bands I'm working with, I started at the end of last year, and they, if anyone knows the Dents. They're from Invercargill and Christchurch, and big shout out, lovely boys.
Cool.
And they've just been coming in for sessions here and there, just chipping away at it, just building it up. And I've I'm trying to work on my workflow for these bigger, longer projects to make sure that things stay consistent.
For sure.
You don't want an album an 11-song album and all the songs sound like they're recorded separately. You want do all the drums at once, or however you want to do it.
Sounding just all cohesive. And,
exactly.
I know next to nothing about the long-term planning or process that goes into making an album, but that to me sounds like a lot of time to be working on something. Do you find it gets quite tedious, or do you find it's just adds to the whole dynamic of the album?
I think if you've got your work plan and you got set out in front of you, you can just tick it off.
For sure.
The hard part and perhaps the tedious part tends to be the mixing, where you're no longer just ticking boxes, you're kind of playing with it and kind of molding it, and there's and your approval comes from your client rather than yourself.
Sure.
And so that's where I find it's the most difficult, the most fun by a long shot. I love mixing, man. It's you're in control.
Immensely satisfying. I can imagine.
Exactly.
From what I've dabbled in it, I can imagine getting that one good result. It's got to be a pretty good feeling.
It's lovely, but it's also it's also someone's intellectual property you're playing with, and you've got to make sure that that's what they want and that's what they're after.
It'd be much easier with someone there, rather than trying to send things back and forth, I'd imagine, especially on such a long-term project like that.
Yeah. Well, I think they've got maybe one more recording session, and that's just little touch-ups and whatnot, and then it'll just be straight into that. But you can ask for as many notes as you want, but having someone there is by far the most effective way of getting the way they want it.
And getting it done a lot quicker because you've got that response then in there to say whether it's sounding the way they want.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a time.
For sure, yeah. What's sort of the longest time you've worked on something? And when something is a long project, what is it that sort of makes it take that long? Is it just sort of people having a change in mind? Have you ever sort of come to the end of mixing a project or whatever, and then they kind of want to take it in a different direction, or it doesn't sound the way they want and they've got to sort of re-record things again? That's quite a broad question.
It is a broad question. I think the Dance is the longest project I've worked on in terms of time and in terms of amount of songs and everything. They're a big 11-song album, which is, it's quite an undertaking.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say we've had really any drawbacks per se. It's I was sick for one session.
Yeah.
That was a bit niggly on my part.
Yeah, right.
But I think an example of what you're saying about having to go back and re-record. I'm working with this folk singer Lara Rose. Shout out Lara.
Cool. Plenty of plugs here today.
Oh, I feel weird just alluding to them and not saying their name.
Yeah, fair enough. Get them out there. Yeah. Go ahead.
And so this was my first time kind of mixing any folky music or even recording any folky music. So it was I just set up as many mics as I felt necessary and just kind of all right, we're going to see what we got here.
Yeah.
And her project's gone through maybe 3 iterations of kind of mixing styles, because I've come from mixing bands and kind of trying to mold the sound into something that you want to hear rather than making the recording speak for itself.
Okay.
And I think that was a huge revelation of mine.
Right.
A wee while ago, I was all right, you just got to make the recording sound good, and then you're sweet.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that it took you one time to come out of everything you thought you knew to find that there's actually another way, or a sort of an eye-opener in a different genre that you never thought you'd be a part of.
Seriously, yeah.
And how you're going to learn and learn.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. It was definitely one of those epiphany moments where oh man, I've got to learn so much more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And sometimes the answer is just doing it simple,
Yeah.
Just getting that one good recording and just tweaking that a bit,
Yeah, just putting the least you can in order to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
So that was that was the one that's kind of been toed and froed the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything else seems to be I try and be as open and as good contact as I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Try and keep a very frequent stream of
Yeah, you're obviously more intertwined in a certain genre, you sort of know with the band you're working with, and obviously with metal music in the past, you sort of know what you're going to be doing when you get into a project like that.
Yeah.
Do you find that if you're going into another genre of music like folk, or if someone came to you with sort of a more hip-hop style beat, is there sort of a general rule of thumb that you would follow, or is it sort of all right, I've got to dig into how this sort of song works and figure out what I need to do?
I think it'd be the latter. I think you really got to try and understand what's trying to be conveyed before you even start.
Yeah.
And another example of that is mastering, mastering, you can't really change how a song is as an entity, but you can change how it's presented. And so that's kind of this, with hip hop is audibly presented so much different from metal.
Yeah.
Just very, very different. And all the instruments take up very different spaces and are very weird, different dynamically and everything like that. But it works, and it works to serve the vocal, or it works to serve various parts of it. And you've just got to kind of listen to it 20 times.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's exaggeration.
Yeah,
but
my next point was, let's get into the nitty gritty. So are you sort of listening to the song as a whole all the way through? You sort of just back and forth, and obviously you've got a trained ear for this sort of thing, so you sort of know where to dive into.
You've got to understand climax, tension, and release, and how it works as a song, and what needs to be exaggerated or toned down in order to create the space or create the intensity or relaxed feel that you think they are going for.
Yeah.
And this is also when it's very helpful to work with someone, and you can I've got a thing that I do where I just meet up with them, and I'm just all right, we're gonna go through your songs, and you're gonna tell me what you want it intensity wise. What parts you want intense, and how you want them to be intense. Do you want them very guitar forward, very loud guitars? Do you want them super drum heavy to create a bit more intensity?
Yeah.
And that way you can kind of understand how the artist is envisioning their song.
Right.
Because ideally you'd have a perfect recording with perfect dynamics and everything like that, but that's never really how it goes.
Yeah. And will be different to different ears as well. Someone might think it's some, but then you get through to someone like yourself or someone who's doing the job and go, "Oh, it's lacking here, or we can do something else here."
And I'm never shy to voice my opinion, but there's also limitations to that because
For sure.
it's not my song at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, it's tricky though. Like, surely still, there comes a point where you do want to cater to the artist as much as you can, but surely there sort of comes a point, say if there's an artist that wasn't really too focused on the nitty gritty, just knew when something sounded good to them straight away, there may be a point in the mix or we sort of go, man, we could actually do something a wee bit better here, or I really don't think that sounds as good as it could be. Like, is that sort of something you avoid, or something that you think you need to tackle?
I embrace it. If anything, I like so many times have my suggestions been implemented on like final versions of songs, and also equally probably tenfold have been harshly rejected.
Yeah. Yep. And fair enough too, man. But
but you gotta put it out there at the very least.
For sure.
Because what if?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess rather than say it and sort of just like not mention it, and they gotta go, oh, I just needed that somewhere or something else to just pick it up a bit more.
And it takes 10 seconds to say that sentence, and that sentence could get someone's mind jogging.
Exactly.
And then just
it's up to the
elaborate
individual to decide how they're going to take that information. Whether it's like, oh, you think it's not as good, or you're like, oh, that's a great suggestion. You never know what you're going to get hit with.
Yeah, and there's also this like kind of like follow on from that by means of you actually suggesting something. It shows that you actually care and are paying attention.
For sure, not just going, oh, you just want it to sound good.
Like, I'm not just recording what you're playing and then playing it back to you.
Yeah,
I want it to sound compelling and interesting and exciting if I can, and I will spitball ideas until we get where we want to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
But and my wee spiel is just tell me to shut up if I'm
Yeah. And it's good to be able to sort of throw that at there straight away. I think there'd be nothing worse than getting real deep into something and then having the fear of not being able to say something that you think might affect someone.
Because you'll just have to backtrack.
Exactly.
Like tenfold,
yeah. So that I think that's good to just establish that, like, please tell me if this is not right, because you obviously care about the artist in that regard and what they're doing. So you've got to be focused on what they're wanting. Yeah.
Because it's my work as well,
Yeah. For sure.
Like, and I really try and take pride in it, and I really try and, like, it's gotten to the point where you have like a customer,
client.
Client relationship, and you've got to treat it as such, and and even like I've worked a lot in hospitality, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If the customer is not happy, your business is going down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it is exactly the same. Yeah, and you've got to treat it as such.
Yeah, you really do. And like, I don't know, it helps that I genuinely care. Hospitality is a bit harder to become so enthused by, I find.
Yeah.
At least on a customer level.
Yeah, for sure.
I very, very much enjoy, cooking and making coffee and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that's almost unrelated.
Yeah, it just pays the bills, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It's not necessarily something you would love doing, like with music, of course, I presume. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence why you're doing it full time. Yeah.
At the moment, just kind of stumbled into that, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. All right, well, we might just take a quick break, eh?
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
So we were just talking outside about gigs.
Yes.
Have you had much involvement in the setup of a gig? Like you were saying, it's interesting you sort of are looking at a gig or experiencing a gig from almost an outsider's perspective. Have you had much involvement in actually sort of setting up and doing like the mastering side of things, or like live mixing, that sort of thing?
I've only done like a handful of gigs live mixing, but it's like, I think in setting up a gig, it's all about it's more about the bigger picture,
Right.
It's about the weeks leading up to it and how they've promoted it, and then once you get in the venue, it's kind of like how it's like the tension and release thing, just like in music, you just build up the hype, then you've got to execute the hype.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to live up to it.
We did a gig at Refuel, U-Bar.
Being Fly Spray.
Fly Spray, yep. On 9/11 last year, and we made a bunch of tinfoil hats and threw them out at everyone, and like just kind of having little parts that kind of create an atmosphere, like even though how insensitive that might be.
Yeah.
it was something.
Yeah, well, it'll get people talking for sure. It's
Yeah.
not every day you get something thrown at you at a gig, you know.
Yeah, and just good lighting and good stage presence and
Yeah.
stage props and everything like that kind of contribute to who you're looking at on stage and what makes that memorable to the audience. You know,
for
like
sure.
if you're not having fun and there's not something else fun to look at
For
on
sure.
stage, then you're just kind of like, well,
Oh man, I've been to a handful of gigs where that it's the exact opposite of that. It's you're there and the band's playing and there's sort of no one forward. There's no one right up, sort of dancing with the band. There's sort of like a group of people standing
there's
back.
like that ring. That,
Yeah,
there should be some colloquial term for that. That ring.
Yeah, it's just awkward because no one wants to go forward and the band's not really being engaging as far as how they're actually performing. They're just sort of standing.
It's real funny because it's always where the light falls. Like as soon as there's a shadow like towards where the crowd should be and where the band should be, that's the line, man. That's the line. As soon as there's too much light, people won't go there unless they're like frothing.
You're right in the eye of everyone. You're literally right in the middle of the gig. Yeah. No, that's one of the things I think. Not something that put me off going to gigs, but something I sort of noticed happen. And it's kind of like you're really reliant on the band to give you a good experience at that gig. And I think there was a few times where that was exactly the case. It was like this is not engaging in any way. There's no way for it to really sort of get involved in this.
Yeah,
So you've got to do stuff like that.
Well, coming from like someone in the audience, but also someone like on stage, it's a bit of a push and shove sort of thing.
Sure.
You know, like you give something to the band as an audience member, and they'll probably give it back to you.
Right.
You know, as well as if you're a band member and you go particularly hard for a part, people will just see that and just kind of like latch on to the sort of like excitement or whatever that you're portraying. But I think like with those gigs that like do seem a little bit lackluster, it just takes one person to walk forward, and in order to just like, people are.
There's usually someone that has the balls to
Yeah,
step up and
everyone.
start dancing.
Yeah, humans are made to conform.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so they'll just everyone one person goes up, everyone will start getting
maybe
amongst.
we should get them. Yeah,
Yeah. I found coming back to the metal stuff. Metal shows are so polar for this sort of thing where you either have like a bunch of just people who know the band, and they'll just be in the back sitting down with a beer, and there'll just be this most ridiculously heavy music happening, and they'll just be chilling at the back, and it only takes like 2 or 3 people to go start a mosh before everyone's in the mosh.
Well, okay, that did go where I thought it was going to go. I thought it was going to be something different because I feel like you would know what you're getting into rather
You'd think
if you're going to a metal gig.
You'd think so, right?
But then, still, from the get-go, it's not just going to be like, right, we're starting, and everyone's like,
no.
There's a point of where it just sort of settles in. People have had a few drinks, they're relaxing a bit. Yeah.
But like, I feel like metal musicians and metal people tend to be like the most anxious creatures.
Yeah, true.
And they're creatures, man.
It's their expression, Yeah, you don't see that side of someone usually on a day-to-day. It's a time to let it all out. Yeah.
My first crowd surf was at a metal gig in Auckland for my mate's band. And it was, I just went up.
Just went for it?
Just went up, mate. It was great.
Shit. Had you sort of... what do you anticipate that you're really hoping people are catching you in that circumstance?
Well, yeah, but like if other people are doing it, then
So someone else had done it before.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't the first one. I was just like, this might be a good time.
Oh, that's good. I would never be the first to do that because you don't know what the hell's going to happen. I don't know what gigs are like. I've never been to that sort of gig and that genre of music, but you would imagine that that's part of what goes down, and people are going to be there to grab you.
Yeah, it's honestly it's just not that common, anyways.
Yeah.
But when you do, when it does happen, you're just like, well, that's just great. That's just great.
Take your chances.
You went and did that, man. That's just great.
Yeah. I think you got to think about what's the worst thing that's going to happen, and if it's not that bad, you might as well do it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's in that stage, it's falling on your ass and potentially hurting yourself. So, but it's all part of it. Yeah. How do you find? We were talking before as well about drinking culture, and I don't know if you specifically meant here in Dunedin or just generally people going to gigs, do you find that in a city like this where we do have a high student population and there is a big culture for people going out and getting really, really drunk and going to gigs, do you find that that sort of affects how gigs are run these days, or do you find that it sort of actually helps in a way? You've got people there that will start to get involved quite heavily in a crowd scenario.
It's a bit of both, to be honest. Like the whole culture surrounding that tends to be people don't go, well, some people don't go for the music. They'll go because there's something on, and it's just another reason to kind of like get amongst.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is all fine and stuff, and it definitely contributes something, but it also, takes away at the same time. You're kind of like, oh, well, I'm just performing to someone that just doesn't care.
Yeah.
And just wants to, is just super horny and just wants to go home with someone
for sure,
who might be interested in the gig, and that's where they'll find those people that they're
exactly. I think that's potentially another thing I had said to you before, that I haven't been super keen on going to gigs recently, and I think part of the reason, to sort of answer my own question from my perspective, is that I think a part of the reason why I didn't like going to gigs so much as of recent is because sometimes they get flooded with people like that, not just people that are potentially messy or sort of too drunk to make the night. For someone like me that doesn't drink a whole lot, or at least anymore, that can be a real dampener in going out to a gig. So I feel like it can play a big part in actually sort of taking people away from that environment.
No, it definitely does. And that's why you'll find that there's like a particular, set of genres that are popular in Dunedin.
Yeah.
Because like these are just accessible genres that people find it easy to get amongst.
Yeah.
They tend not to be particularly like audibly offensive. And so you can just go to these things and you don't know what's on, but you can expect something palatable.
Yeah.
And that's just like it's just a great environment for that sort of behavior to flourish.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
It's case by case as well too. Like it depends where the gig is and who's playing, and
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so.
It's a bit of a gamble.
What
and
time of the week?
Yeah,
what time of the
exactly.
year? Even
exactly. Yeah, and the point you made before about people just going out to gigs not necessarily to see the band, but just something that it's just on, as something that they can go to do. I haven't sort of placed an opinion on whether I think that's a good thing or not, because obviously you get exposure, or you can get a big crowd one night from a group of people that are just going out for the sake of going out. But how often are those people going to those gigs that they don't know who it is that's playing, and going home and going, oh, that was such and such band.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I look out for the next one. It's pure luck, I suppose, to know whether there's going to be a huge mosh of people there or not.
I think people in the door is a good thing as a musician, and just that exposure is good, and it's up to you as a musician or as a performer to invoke a performance that's memorable enough to yank them out of that state of mind while they're there.
For sure.
We'll just be like, I just, threw down super, super hard, and some, breather just, I'm just like beating down on breathers with riffs.
Definitely.
And they're out there just being like, that was something completely different that I didn't expect to see tonight, which might invoke I might look those guys up sometime.
Yeah, some deep emotion, somewhere going, wow, I actually got blown away here.
And for those who don't have that and everything, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like that's not up to me to decide. Like I'm not going to tell people what they should and shouldn't like, but you ought to just try your best as a musician, and the more people that you can perform in front of, as a general rule, is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you know how to facilitate a crowd.
Yeah.
Doing something right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're doing well if you do have a mosh of really drunk people and they are like super encouraging, like if they're super into it, whether they know who you are or not. Regardless of what music playing, if you're into it, they're going to be even more into it, because that's what they're looking for. A lot of, at least, guys that are younger and looking to go out and really have like a night where they can throw themselves around and have that sort of time. They know they're going to get.
I'm always in two minds about the whole kind of like rough and tumble in the pit though, because like I personally, circumstantially, absolutely love it. I think it's just, if you are in that, I guess like mind state, then it's just like so much fun.
Yeah.
But also it's just kind of a bit socially irresponsible given the wrong circumstance.
It can go real south, and it depends on the individuals that are there. And I think there are a mass of people, especially young males, at gigs like these. Too much can happen too quickly, or at least there are going to be guys that are heavily involved in a mosh side of things, where they're jumping around, but will get annoyed when you sort of come into their space, or guys that are there just to sort of like get into a fight or some sort of argument of some sort. And that just that's another thing that has happened to me too many times, to be like, fuck, I just hate being in these big crowds. And it sucks because you hate to see it, but that is the reality. A lot of guys are out there to do that and have nights like that where they can have a bit of rough and tumble, aside from how the music's going. Yeah,
there's some consideration to be had for the other people at the gig, as always. But, a mosh is circumstantial of that. If you got 100 people jumping up and down, then that's what's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can tell, and I think again that comes down to the genre of music. Like, there's going to be certain times where that is really just like, what the hell are you doing? I've been in scenarios like that where it's a pretty mellow gig and someone's just going way too hard, and it's like, cool, you're enjoying it, but you're actually kind of making it really uncomfortable for everyone else here. There's definitely a time and place, but a lot of the time it can just really get out of hand, and you can't really do much as the musician to stop that. I mean, that's usually up to the gig to sort of sort out the
venue,
people that are really,
the security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When, just back to our point about setting up gigs and things, are you quite reliant? I don't know how much involvement you've really had in that, but do venues facilitate a lot of things that you need in regards to like PA equipment, and like if you wanted to incorporate video and stuff, or is a lot of it on you as an artist or as like the person who's orchestrating the gig to sort those things out on your own? I don't know how that side of things work.
Any which way with that. For a lot of venues in Dunedin, they have a house PA that you're expected to use.
Yeah.
And you can put on as much or as little as you want, really. Yeah. You've got Gravity in town who do a lot of gear hire, like with nice desks. They even hire out sound guys and everything like that, and that's great. And if you've got someone in particular, you'll be like, all right, I know they do a great job. They're going to make the place sound mean. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But you could also just be like, oh, well, I guess I'll hop on. I'll see how we go. But, so like in terms of like what venues provide for you, it just tends to be security and just...
Do you have a preference?
And hopefully a couple of free drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'd hope so if you're the one playing. Yeah. Do you have a favourite spot in town that you've played at, or do you have a preference, like you're going to have a good time if you play at this place, or it's going to be fairly subpar if you're at another place? You don't have to name names, but if there's a particular place you've had a good time at.
I think when the Crown is good, it's the best.
It's going, yeah. I quite
but
enjoy
when
the
it's
environment.
bad, it's the worst.
Okay, both ends of the scale. Interesting.
I think the Crown's really great because you're on the same level as everyone, and I feel like it's a lot easier to get a crowd response out of what you're doing on stage. With if you're being a bit wild, then people at the front are much more likely to go wild at the Crown than if you're
It's an interesting
elevated.
Atmosphere in there because, like you say, you're all on the same level, even the same level as a band. So you're almost involved in it in a way because you're literally right next to these people rather than looking up at a stage or something like that. Yeah. I haven't been to too many, but it feels a lot more intimate, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think is really great. I think it's super cool.
And been around forever.
Yeah, just the history in that place is just wild. Like, they've just seen it all.
Yeah.
Like, from back to front.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, cool. Again, we were talking before on the break about how you have academic parents. And I wanted to ask you, has that been something that has affected your creative growth growing up, or is it something that has been well facilitated? Like, was there an expectation at all for you to follow a certain path, or?
It was never said explicitly.
Yeah.
I think like I just always assumed that there was kind of a bit of a template for like at least people in our family to, you know, do high school, do university, do postgrad, move overseas somewhere, and, you know, just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've never really, you know, they've actually been quite supportive.
Cool.
I don't think they really took a lot of it particularly seriously when it came to, especially when I started, you know, talking, you know, playing more gigs and talking about, you know, having clients at the studio and stuff. I still think that even now when I'm like doing it full time, there's still a wee bit of there's still some apprehension there, and I think it's understandable. Like the music industry is like can be kind of volatile.
Yeah, and it's not a super solid career choice, I guess, depending on what aspect of it you're pursuing.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten a pretty safe bet where it's like essentially a trade.
Yeah, like you're obviously making work for yourself on a weekly basis. It's not like it's an unreliable source of work or income or whatever.
Yeah, I think the thing is in music, at least as an artist, I think it's particularly hard.
Right.
As an event manager, as a something which has like essentially a job set of skills which is defined by the industry.
Exactly.
Way easier.
Oh, 100%.
Just you can just get a job.
Yeah,
you can't just get a job as an artist. You've got to create your job and create everything you stand for and get everyone on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then stuff follows from there.
That's right. And that's I guess what you're studying at music school and that sort of thing. I have no insight into what is actually taught there, but it seems like it's all more catered towards that side of things where there's actually probable career choices involved rather than just relying on your creative side to take you where you want to go, you know?
Yeah, I think it's your work ethic, just more than anything, you know, like if you work really, really hard at like, you know, making those connections and, you know, going out and getting involved, like so much of the music industry is social.
Yeah.
And who you know, as well as how hard you work.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
It's just the more people you know in various places, it tends to just everything just falls into place way, way faster.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, you know, go try and seek out the attention. You just kind of like if someone knows that you do something, then they'll ask you for that thing when they need it, and that's fine.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you can go quite far, and one thing I admire about you taking up the mixing, mastering side of things, or having such an interest in that, is that you are building a platform for yourself, because there's always going to be artists that need that work done but don't want to put in the time to do it themselves, so they always want to look. That's, I think, a point in the creative process where someone will look to someone else to finish that thing for them, so there's always a job for that person who's going to do that work. I think it's from a career standpoint, it's a real wise thing to have a good knowledge base on, you know.
And that's why I say it's, you know, you can treat it like a trade.
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly.
You've got a skill set that someone else doesn't have the confidence in, or the, you know, the base learning for that you've already done the work for, and they'll like, you know what, instead of putting in 10,000 hours, I'll just pay a small hourly rate to
absolutely,
someone who has.
Do you think that that played into part of why you got so invested in that side of things, or was it purely just an interest in how that music worked? Did you sort of think, well, if I know how to do this well, that's probably going to help me have more of a career or sort of a job related to music? Or is it just like you started figuring out how it works and go, oh damn, that sounds like me, you know? Yeah,
well, it all started, like I didn't even really get into mixing until maybe like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I never really did it in high school. I was like, you know, a year through uni when I first kind of like got introduced to the concept like properly. Like obviously I knew it existed and roughly what it consisted of, but I had a really good friend who made just, you know, like metal demos, and I was just like, damn, that's pretty cool. And we wrote like an EP over like 2 weeks, which has never been put out, probably will never see the light of day. But it was like the most fun I've ever had. Like it was just wild, and just being able to hear your ideas as a third party and be able to review them and change them accordingly to what you kind of had envisioned was like the coolest thing. So like, I guess for me, the whole start of it wasn't really career focused.
Right.
It was more, I just really enjoy the process.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, that
And,
probably
yeah.
means more to you on a personal level, and more how you approach. If it does become sort of a career path, at least you have the genuine interest in what you're doing before you sort of dive into that, rather than going, I can do this well, I might as well make a job out of it. At least it's fairly sustainable, at least in your own mind, in terms of your enthusiasm.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's just the goods.
For sure. Yeah, I just again find it so crazy to have that under your belt. I think it's such a broad thing to have a knowledge base on, that you could really do anything with it, regardless of music. You do anything audio wise with that sort of skill.
Yeah. I think like another cool thing about it is when you once you've done it enough and you've kind of done dabbled in a few different sort of like sounds and genres and whatnot, you kind of like build this way of listening to music which is just so objective,
right?
Like you don't I don't know, I find myself I feel like I can listen to most things now, and like whether or not I'm actually subjecting myself to the artist's experience, I can be like, all right, well, that kick is awesome.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like you're saying with the gigs, you're looking at it from a perspective of how it's being performed and what they're using, that sort of thing. You're looking at it from a third eye.
Yeah, and even if it's something I'd never listened to in my own time, I can still tell that there's been excitement in this one part, and I can be like, well, they did a great job at making, like, building the tension there, and wow, that was powerful there.
Yeah, and so do you think you could pick out, like, if someone wasn't super into what they were doing, or whether an artist was more sort of reliant on a producer or a mixing, mastering expert to sort of come in and do that for them, or is it purely just like how good something sounds?
I think how good something sounds, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really everything. But I say this a lot. If it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
And music is objective like that. For me at least, like if someone thinks it's good in their mind, and that makes it good.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just think that's like a really cool thing. You can go anywhere with that.
Do you find that or have you found that because of the skill or because of this ear that you have now, you're sort of more appreciative of genres that you perhaps weren't so keen on beforehand? Like you've gone sort of back to something else, or you've had to mix something and sort of realized why a song of this genre sounds good, or what it is about this music that is good. Does that make sense?
I don't really know how to respond to that per se, but I definitely think if we come back to this folk example that I had, realizing that you just got to let it do its thing rather than changing it to what you want to hear.
Yeah, more organic sounding.
Yeah, and that same principle applies across all genres.
Yeah,
like with jazz, for example, it's super dynamic. You've got loud flourishes and just like spicy chords here and there, and they just kind of like hold their place. But even if you took that jazz sound and put it into I keep coming back to metal, very comforting for me.
Please, man, that's great.
Jazz in a metal context can be done.
Yeah.
But it generally isn't, because those sonic concepts aren't in a metal context or tend to be very like masked over, kind of like lost in translation, perhaps. And that's just why I think certain genres sound the way they do, is because it's just the best way of conveying the musical idea.
There is a routine or a system in place made specifically for that.
Because music is information,
Yeah.
If I'm talking to you, I'm, talking in like a sort of monotone, calm voice.
Yeah.
If I'm shouting at you the same thing, it's going to mean something different.
Yeah. Oh, that's
it's all in the presentation.
Yeah, right.
I think, and that's what I think is really cool about just all of audio.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, any art form that's expressive like that is powerful, delivered the right way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like a song isn't actually its recorded self, you know. A song is an entity by itself, and its recorded thing is just how it's presented.
Yeah, right.
You know, anyone can sing one like Wagon Wheel. That's the same song, but the way it's presented in an audio thing is just how everyone sees it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just a spit.
And subjective, like you say, it's all down to the individual, how they perceive the music anyway. Yeah.
Or subjective and objective, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is more subjective. Well, yeah, I don't know. It's however you want to.
It's too broad, isn't it?
However, yeah.
You can't define it.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, Peter. Man, I think we covered everything that I wanted to talk to you about there. We've done about an hour, which I think is fairly impressive.
I think that's great.
I really appreciate you coming on, man. This was really fun.
I'm very glad to be here.
Cool. Well, we'll have you back on in the future.
I'd love
sure.
to. Yeah,
Awesome.
hopefully some stuff's progressed by that point.
Cool. Fuck yeah. Me too.
Finished off some projects.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sweet. All right, man. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.